Okay, so are you ready?
I'm super ready. I was born ready.
This is true. Today's episode of The Real Deal On is brought to you by GuidedHypnotic.com. That's GuidedHypnotic.com. If you're feeling stressed out, anxiety ridden, perhaps struggling with night terrors or even worse, day terrors, go ahead and download your free hypnotic guided meditation at GuidedHypnotic.com. Sure,
Very
it's
impressive.
sponsored by me.
Very impressive.
Oh, what a treat. Oh, my goodness. It's crazy. We try and talk. We text back and forth, call you. Every time I call you, like, oh, hey, baby, I'm in the middle of something. I've got, 12 things going on. We're getting on the road and I've got 8 fires to put out. Can I call you later? And then we don't connect for a bit.
Right. Yeah, but we still circle around and
we always circle back, dovetail back into reality. So let's give a little background here. I'm going to read a little bit of your bio, not the whole thing, because you are so accomplished that I can't even read your entire career in less than a minute. It's going to be like the whole show would be me reading your career. You've got a book. It's amazing. But here we go. Let's start a little bit.
All right, cool.
Raymond Louis Amico. Ray Amico is a multifaceted musician, composer, producer, studio engineer for over 30 years, known as the guitar player in the legendary New York bizarrecore band Six and Violence, as well as a veteran tour manager, production manager, front of house sound engineer, and tour accountant. That is pretty cool. Born in Brooklyn, New York in the late 60s, Ray started out in the early 80s, first as a musician, then as a producer and studio engineer. Ray worked for several years in various New York City studios as an engineer for A&M Records, working on projects for artists such as Celine Dion, Taylor Dayne, Mariah Carey, Cheap Trick, Norman Bates and the Showerheads, and many, many others. I worked on those with you.
You did.
From the mid-'80s through the late 2000s, Ray was best known as a guitarist for the New York bizarrecore band Six and Violence, who were known on the scene for their radically strange music and stage shows, which drew notice from Ian Anderson of Jethro Tull, who loved the band so much that he played flute on 2 songs for their 1989 debut album, Let Us Pray. Now that lettuce is lettuce the vegetable. The same year that Jethro Tull controversially won the Grammy for Best Hard Rock Heavy Metal Recording. I believe the reason why they won that award was because of Ian's performance on the Six and Violence, and they did not know how to make that all happen for you, is my guess.
We've always had a real influence on the Grammys and every other major award.
I know, it's so true.
I couldn't have written it better myself there, Doug.
Unbelievably. And I just want to add, because the stuff that is important, because we'll be talking about the transformation, is over the past 25 years, you've been on the road almost constantly, which is true. We started that working with artists internationally, with artists such as Tony Braxton, John Fogerty, George Lopez, Dane Cook, Smash Mouth, Keisha, Devo, Fiona Apple, Sublime, The Cult, Jane's Addiction, The Two Skinny Jays, which we did together, I believe, right? When Fat.
Yes, we did.
Yep. Zucchero, Panic at the Disco, Dream Theater, Weird Al Yankovic, System of a Down, Nancy Sinatra, TSO, the Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Mark Wood and Laura Kay were on last week. They say hey. Eric Johnson, Chic with Nile Rodgers, the Beastie Boys, Sinead O'Connor, Daryl Hall and John Oates, Jim Gaffigan, and many, many others. Dude, so glad that you took time out of your crazy schedule, although I know we're kind of capitalizing on the fact that touring as we know it has stopped for a moment. So
yeah, we're taking a breather.
Yeah, so I'm of course capitalizing on that opportunity.
It was
so
good.
So let's dig in. We've known each other. I said over 20 years. It could be even more than that.
It is. It's actually closer to 30 years, because when we were both working, we met working at the same studio. Cove City Sound Studios and Dream in New York City in the early 90s. So technically, that's getting close to 30 years.
That's not right. You're starting to feel old now.
We were both 4 years old at the time.
That's right. Yes, it was amazing the opportunities we were provided.
It was more of a daycare center.
Yeah. Well, it was, when we think back, I mean, we were quite young at that time, and the opportunities provided were amazing. I mean, we worked on some incredible records, and participated in multiple Grammys, and also got to do some just incredible variety of music.
Yeah, definitely a variety. Definitely like spanning the musical genre. Because it was never really one particular genre. The studio itself, being an A&M house studio, the producers and stuff that was brought in, and a lot of the music was brought in. What was, stuff like Taylor and Mariah and everything. So there was that aspect of it. But being a functioning studio back then at the time, all different kinds of artists and everything all coming in, and you and I getting to like literally go from this project to that project. It was exciting. It was an exciting time.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't change a thing. Still talk to almost everybody that was involved there. I still see Richie Kanata occasionally. He's going to be on the show. We just have to schedule the time. I've seen him play with the Lords of 52nd Street now a bunch of times when he comes by.
Awesome.
Obviously, Mark and Laura. I talked to Dan, but so here we are. We're making these records, and as it's going, I joined Fat for a while, and you were tour managing both Fat and Jay's at the same time, or is it?
Well, it was the transition, or the way that actually worked was, going back to even my days playing in like the Six and Violence and starting to produce and engineer stuff. That was where I started really, basically, not only with the Six and Violence, producing and engineering all of our own stuff, also our sister band, Bates The Showerheads. So I was the young kid of the whole group, but always had my fingers in everything. So that really piqued my interest of studio work and everything. So Cove City was my first real studio gig when you and I met. And the learning curve and working on SSLs and Mozarts and old school outboard, et cetera, like that. It was a huge learning curve. But for me, after a couple of years there doing that and working on these projects, there was a real glass ceiling occurring by the 90s in terms of how far I potentially may have gone as a producer engineer in the studio. And fortunately, you and I had worked on Fat's debut record on A&M, you mixing the entire record and me working on all the tracking and everything with you. Fat literally came to me and said, listen, we need someone to go on the road with us and do our sound and tour manage us and everything. And like I said, from being literally 15 years old in the Six and Violence and basically doing all that for myself, I was in my early 20s, early mid 20s, and said, yeah, I totally do that. So I basically left Cove and hit the road with Fat, and I've been on the road nonstop for the last 26 years, literally since that Fat tour. Those Fat tours, and they were good. They were good segue in quickly into the touring world. From the studio world going straight into the touring world.
And it worked out so perfectly and elegantly for you because you didn't stop. Like, you were able to find your niche, for lack of a better word, because the good news is for you, it didn't impact. So for the way it impacted me when Napster came out, that was like the peak of my career in the music industry. Because that started to change the whole dynamics, Pro Tools, that technology, where Pro Tools came out and studios started closing, and I ended up joining Fat, and we went on the road together, and then A&M went away, and then we went over to Sony, and Sony, we're like, okay, we're on Sony, this is going to be great, and then the record never came out. And that, by the way, that was an amazing record. I was so proud of that record. But anyway, I digress. So I had to find a new way to reposition, and find a new way to, make. I made the choice to help people make music of their lives, How was that for you when you saw the studios closing and you saw potentially the record companies not maybe supporting tours as much? How did you position yourself? Did that show up for you?
Well, for me personally, I found pretty early that as much as I love making my own music and still do to this day, I'm literally working on music right now, but I found that I could make a living more helping other people do their music necessarily than me. I've tons of friends in huge bands, and I used to make fun of them all the time and say, you've played for tens of thousands of people. I've played for thousands of tens of people. Me and my own music wasn't necessarily gonna bring me into a career, but the music industry and all the facets of it were definitely something that I was able to more dial in, because I've always fancied, literally, because I can do almost anything related into it. I obviously not only do sound, but I play all the instruments, meaning so that I can also tech all the instruments. From doing sound and tour managing at those van level kind of tours with Fat and everything, very, very quickly and rapidly went into, arenas and much larger venues, et cetera, learning production. And for all these years now, I've been wearing a lot of hats as a production manager, a tour manager, front of house sound engineer, monitor engineer, tour accountant. I basically liken myself to, I'm the guy in the parade that follows the elephant. There's just, I got a shovel in my hand and I got to handle shit. Or I am basically the wolf, the Mr. Wolf in Pulp Fiction. Right. What has to get done? What has to get fixed? Let's do it right now.
Now, would you say that your range of skill sets is unique, or is the gig that you have, or the gigs that you've had, is it commonplace for someone to have such a wide and varied set of skills and abilities in the tour management, production? All of that?
It started out as a necessity, like being at that level of touring where, the band you're touring with can barely afford you, let alone a couple of people. So wearing multiple hats at that level and that time is out of necessity. Larger acts, a single truck, 2-truck kind of tour going into theaters and, et cetera. You're able to wear a couple of hats and streamline your crew, streamline the amount of bodies and people that you have around you. And that's a skill set that not everybody has, but it's certainly beneficial. The guys that I know, we all know each other in this business, because it's not that big of a business. It literally is very circular and cyclical, and we all kind of circle each other and hand off to each other and everything. So there are a lot of guys who do that, but it kind of goes in two different directions. As you're getting into larger acts, et cetera, like that, you'll find that it's not necessarily that particular job where you should be handling that many things, or the jobs become so intense that you really shouldn't be handling that many things. You should really concentrate on one or two things instead of trying to wear 3 or 4 hats, on a single tour. The benefits, say, for management and business management is a whole different story of that, because as bands have become more reliant on touring for their incomes, the incomes from record sales, et cetera, and everything like that, not as much as what it used to be. They're much more reliant upon their touring income. Therefore, where can they streamline costs? Where can we keep our cost level down? Which, back in the day, if you're wearing a couple of hats, you certainly are in the position of saying, well, I deserve this much because I'm doing all these things. What you find now is that business managers and like that have become very, very used to now having less people that they need to put on payroll, et cetera, like that. And, it gets tougher where you're really having to demand, hey, listen, I'm saving you extra airfare. I'm saving you extra hotel rooms. I'm saving you, extra per diems. I'm saving you all these extra costs. that should be passed down, to you for doing that for them.
Of course. Now, do you do ever like rev share? Is that ever part of the conversation, or is it always a flat rate?
No, you're generally in the music business, and in that aspect of it, you're really a hired gun, and your services are you're being paid for your services, and obviously, there are different acts and different scenarios, different things like being held on retainer. That an artist is like, you know what, whether I'm on the road or not, I'm going to pay you something. I don't want you to go,
yeah.
Or. For me, it's very common that I work with usually average of like say 3 or 4 different artists in the span of a year, because they're not necessarily all touring at the same time, or they're going back into an album cycle, going back in the studio, or doing this and that. And I'm like I said, the guy following the elephant. I go follow another elephant.
You go find another elephant. So on that level. When you talk about like working with different artists and so forth, have you ever had, and now kind of geeking out a little, done a live, like recorded live shows, and like, is it on a tour? Do they do multiple shows where they're making a live record, and then are they, fixing them on the road and going, oh, let's break out the studio, I gotta, fix a couple of parts, or re-sing something?
Back in the day, I'll give you a perfect example. So you brought up the Two Skinny Jays, which was one of my favorite bands in the entire world.
Yeah,
favorite people in the entire world. And literally when I got hired basically to do them, to tour manage them, to show them how much I wanted to work with them, I took one of their songs and I re-recorded the entire song, played everything, and gave it Pluto's a Planet. And I gave it to him, said, this is how bad I want to work with you guys. We did a lot of like live recordings. I try to track and record every one of their shows. So I've got a library of old Two Skinny J shows. And then we did film a DVD, totally guerrilla style. I mean, like we had like two or three of our friends with 2 or 3 cameras. I set up a multi-track in front of house, which we didn't carry or anything like that, and had a lot of technical issues about it, but we tracked it and recorded it. And after we did that, like literally on the road, mixing it, like had to fix a vocal or 2 here and there. That's fairly common. To the furthest extent, where with Dream Theater, we filmed a live DVD at the Budokan at Budokan in Tokyo. And it was fantastic. I mean, it was glorious.
How does that complicate the gig?
Well, first of all, you don't do it. You don't record or film your first show of the tour. Let's put it that
way. You learned that by experience?
Yeah, I learned that by using my brain. like you don't debut in LA or New York. You debut in Omaha or somewhere, and you work out the kinks. And then once you work out the kinks, halfway through the year of doing it, and everybody's got their stuff down, that's when you now decide to bring the other production element into it, where you've got a whole nother crew of engineers and gaffers and cameramen and gear, and I mean, just it becomes a way more involved process.
And how many shows did you record when you did that? Were they just one night, or is it a few that they get put together?
We usually do a few just to make sure that we got it. And the funniest part of that one that we did, there was a certain time. Dream Theater shows are fantastic. They're they're long, they're extensive. I mean, they play their catalog, lock in their catalog.
There's a lot of beats.
A lot of beats. I got 99 time changes and 8-1, 4-4-8-1. So basically, like, there's a time frame with the building and union and going into overtime and sort of like that. So I had to tell Mike Portnoy, I was like, listen, like when you're coming down to the end of the show, like, this is by this time we are going to go into overtime and expenses and costs. And he said, no, we'll be able to squeeze it in. So they were getting into the last song. And I ran up behind Mike on the drum kit, because it's like 11-minute song. And I'm like, Mike, you're never going to make it. So just, don't worry about it. And he's like, no, we'll make it. They played that song like a horse running like that. They played it so freaking fast. And I was like, you don't have to play it extra fast. You're not going to make it anyway. We're paying for it. Don't worry about it. So I love watching that DVD. It's one of my favorite live DVDs. But when you get up to the end, I mean, somebody might say, wow, they got a serious live tempo going.
Right.
No, they were trying to.
That is some cool backstory. Is that mentioned anywhere on the DVD or anything, so that someone? That's pretty cool. All right.
I have no idea, to be honest with you.
Awesome. So, share what's your mindset as a tour ends? Do you already have another gig lined up? Are you marketing yourself? Are you calling people like, hey, I'm ready. I got, something's ending. Like, how do you keep that flow going? Because it's an entrepreneurial gig. I mean, it's a gig, it's a gig. It's not salaried. You don't have, guaranteed another tour. How do you market yourself? How do you continue the flow?
Well, as I was saying before, the fact that it's not a large industry, it's a large industry, but it's not a crazy amount of people that do it. So we all know each other independently, et cetera. So there's a lot of circumstances where, you're on a tour, and how long it's booked for. The booking agent has already kind of said, like, we're up to this date, and you're doing due diligence with management, et cetera, going, okay, is anything else booked after this? If it's January, February, which is a slow time of the year, you're generally like, starting up with an artist. Okay, what's your plan for the year? Like, what's your plan? Because you really need to be several months ahead of yourself in terms of not only flexibility, but planning out, like, hey, am I going to be able to get home for a little while to see the wife and kids and the puppy dogs?
Yeah, there's an interesting, just side note, I don't want to forget, is the dealing with that. You have a family.
Right.
How often are you home?
As often as you can, and as often as it's not really necessarily maybe your choice, because if you're working, and obviously things are harder these days than they necessarily were back in the day. Or if you're a bit younger, maybe you don't have a family, and you're a bit more free will and everything. As you get older, and you have your family, you have your responsibilities, you're really kind of balancing the time, and also hopefully choices of gigs. Like, hey, I would be available for this, but your touring schedule is say longer than I necessarily want to commit to. And maybe there are things that you pass on because, literally because of that. If you're just literally going to take any gig that's offered, anything that's thrown at me, you're really beholden to other people's everything. So it's definitely a juggle. It's a juggling.
And now that you've been doing this longer and you're more established, you have probably less fear about turning down a gig, because that you have enough momentum in the industry, enough resources, enough contacts, enough confidence that if there's a gig that comes up, you're not going to go, oh, no one's going to call me again.
I think everyone that I know, let's put it this way, as confident as they might be, or confident in not only their previous history of work, et cetera, like that, there's still always like that little tinge, like the little idiosyncrasies or nervousness, or you buy a new car, and you got the car payments. You like all of a sudden, like, oh crap, like those car payments are coming around again.
They don't stop when I stop.
Right. Why can't you just be fair? No. So so I think there's a little bit of a balance between having the confidence of your confidence in yourself, when you go for a gig, or you're interviewing and everything like that. It's you're reflecting what your resume is of what you've done before, and that is literally who you are. What you've done it shows what you can do.
So your discography is like your tour schedule, your past tour schedule.
Yeah, pretty much. And like I said, you need to have the confidence in that. Also, I mean, you're interviewing, say, for a position, working with artists, et cetera, like that.
So what's that like? So you interview. So do you interview with the manager, with the artist, with the agent? Like who?
Yes.
All of them.
Basically, yeah, because you are in the position of, say, tour manager or production manager or something like that. You are coming in to be an extension of management, right? Working alongside them, an extension of business management, right? Which are two separate entities. An extension of, say, the artist, if you are working like, very, very close with an artist and their family, making sure that they're comfortable with you, that, artists are a different breed, and they also have a lot of idiosyncrasies and paranoias. I mean, in this industry and everything, got to be real reflective of that. So yeah, you interview basically with pretty much everybody so that they know who they've got and who's coming into their family, who's coming in to take care of stuff.
Do you have a pattern of the people you interview best with? Like the role, is it the tour manager, the business manager, the artist, like, is there someone that those interviews, that'll be great, that'll be fine. And then you get a little nervous, like, okay, those are always a little touchy.
No, to be honest with you, like if you're a tour manager interviewing with management, that manager knows exactly who and what they're looking for. And because it's such a small industry, we all know each other. I might have worked for that manager for a different band already. My reputation of working with another artist, like, they know each other. So you can't and shouldn't really burn any bridges in this business from an artist or actor you've worked with before, because you may not work necessarily with that artist, but you're certainly going to work with their booking agent on a bunch of different artists. With management, management might say, you know what, this was good. It wasn't the perfect fit, but I've got this other artist. I think you'd be a much better fit with that. And so
that happened before, where someone has been.
Well, I've worked with different artists from the same manager, or booking agents, or even my travel agents, et cetera, like that, have been, big helps in terms of, like, I want to put you in for this. I want to put you in for that, because they know you and they know what you do, and they're privy to what the needs are.
And have you ever gone into an interview and met with them and not burned a bridge, but like, you know what, I don't think this is going to be for me, and turned down the gig when offered, perhaps?
Yeah, no, it's definitely a give and take, because like I said, unless you're just desperate, you got to see whether this is going to be for you. There are gigs that I've done that I dove headlong into it and gave it literally my all. But it just wasn't the right scenario. And, it didn't quite work. It didn't quite work or fit just right way. And
have you ever left the tour because of that? Like in the middle of it and been like, you know what, this isn't working.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going to say who.
No, I'm not asking you. I would.
No. But the reason I'm saying this, because I went straight to the artist and said, I love you. I've loved helping you. But I think you'd be better off with someone else. I think it would work better for you. Or we had actually toured together for quite a while, and I even said, I was like, you probably should have somebody else in this doing this, and I still love you, and I still talk to them, still hang, like when we can. So yeah, that without a doubt happens when you've been doing it long enough where you can recognize the signs. You can recognize. I guess it would probably be akin to anybody who's been in a relationship before and like realizing that the relationship's just not really working.
Right. So here we are now. 4 months ago, there was an awkward stop to everything. Yeah. Who were you with, and what happened at that time, or were you on the road? And then
I had the fortune. I lived in Rome for years. Actually, when I was production manager for Dream Theater, I moved to Rome, Italy, and while I was there, I worked with several different Italian promoters and productions who would hire me to be kind of the intermediary production manager, working for them, but being able to work with the English and American crews that would come in for, on tours, so they had someone who could speak Italian to the Italians, speak English to the English,
you speak Italian?
They parlo italiano.
Okay.
Yeah. If you live there, you better. My Italian's not fantastic, but yeah, I speak Italian. So I'd worked for an Italian promoter there years ago when I lived there, and just so fortunately, this last year, the Italian singer Eros Ramazzotti, he had a tour booked last January, February, March, so of 2018. Which just before they were about to do, I was going to do the tour with him, and he had developed a throat issue, so they had to postpone that entire tour. So this past January, February, March, we were able to do that tour. So I was on the road in Central and South America with Eros and his full Italian band and crew in January, February, into like literally the beginning of March. And if you recall, where the virus really hit first was in Italy.
Yeah.
So as we're finishing up the tour, we were in Central and South America, just coming back into the States. Literally, this was about March 1st. The Italians were all starting to get very, very nervous. Obviously, large sections of the country getting shut down. They were starting to get worried if they could even get home to be with their family. So I was literally on tour as that was happening.
So what did you guys do? You just cut it off? Did you end the dates? Like, did you decide to, or did the venues decide to?
No, well, the venue, definitely the promoters and venues, we were still doing shows, but you could see the writing on the wall, especially with the big Live Nations and, big promoters and everything like that. So we were winding down to literally just the last handful of shows.
Okay.
when that was all happening. And then I unfortunately took a double hit because that was the beginning of March, the tornadoes that hit Nashville, Tennessee.
Oh, that's right. You were there.
My wife and I had been living there. We just moved back to California, but I had a storage unit full of my music gear and studio gear and stuff like that took a direct hit in the tornado. So we had maybe 2 shows left back with Eros, and I said, "Scusi, I gotta head to Nashville." So I had left with 2 shows left to go, and they wound up canceling those 2 shows because of the virus.
Wow.
Yeah, so
how did the all your stuff with your gear, anything salvageable?
Well, a little tiny bit. I mean, it was completely destroyed. The roof ripped off. The walls collapsed in. So they basically deemed it a complete destruction, but made me sign waivers upon death of you can go in and see what you could salvage. Most of which was completely water damaged, et cetera, and that I couldn't even pull out because of the walls. So I pulled out what I could in the condition that it was in, threw it in a different storage unit about 10 miles south there, had a single day to just kind of look through destroyed stuff, and then was like, okay, dude, I gotta go back and shelter in place. And I've been sheltering in place ever since. So I have no idea. I literally have no idea.
Oh, wow. Sorry, dude.
Yeah.
Did you have another gig lined up that
yes.
Yeah,
I was scheduled to start up literally by mid-March. I'd actually a couple of different projects that I'd been working on and talking about, and I was just about to go into rehearsals and start advancing gigs, and talked with management, and they were just like, "We're not doing anything. It's all stopped."
Have you heard any rumblings of starting up again? Is there because in my world, I'm speaking, all my gigs, disappeared. And, that's kind of the inspiration to do this show, to also help people, but also to continue, engaging. And because most importantly is making a difference, and helping people see what's possible, especially when people are like, I don't know what to do. So let's find people who've been through, things and had to adjust. And there's patterns in that. Tony Robbins is doing an event in August in Texas. He's used to doing, the last event we did with him was 14,000 people in Miami. this is going to be 2,200 or 2,500 people. And I haven't spoken to them. I'm not part of the team anymore. I could ask, out of curiosity, but it's starting like tonight. There's a networking event that we're going to, and like so people here in Florida anyway, things are opening up, and now we're people are like, oh, it's maybe not a good idea. But what's been going on in your world? Is there a buzz? Are people talking about like, oh, we got to do something? There's a lot. I mean, everybody's communicating. There's been a lot of webinars and virtual town meetings to discuss things. And there's a couple of things that people are attempting. So, for instance, this has now kicked off a lot of people doing, say, an online performance, trying to post it or put it out there, somehow monetize it. Randy Jackson, Tony Harnell, those guys I saw doing that. Exactly. There's a couple of production houses that I've been speaking to that are setting themselves up now for being able to, say, produce a safe event for broadcast. So that's something that's happening. There's been some drive-in shows, meaning they've transformed an outdoor, either drive-in theater or a drive-in movie theater or an outdoor area. And I think Keith Urban did one in Nashville. And I think Garth Brooks, is getting ready to do something. How successful is that? From what I understand, as a unique experience, probably well. But in terms of say ramping up to do a lot of stuff, there's not a lot of drive-in theaters around anymore. No, that had really gone the wayside, until everyone saw Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's like, oh, that's right, that's what a drive-in theater looked like. I'm very I'm hopeful yet cynical. I'm hopeful that things can happen and work out. My personal opinion, I believe in science. I believe that I don't want people to put themselves in jeopardy, and I don't think anyone should. So I'm very, very cautiously just watching to see when things develop more into, say, a vaccine or something. Because the idea of say a bunch of people getting back on a bus and living together tightly to go from place to place to place to do shows, it's going to be a very slow ramp up, in my opinion, because just the cautious nature of from a business aspect, the promoters and agents and everyone who have to pitch it to artists. Those artists generally their deals are either, say, flat guarantees based on how many tickets sold for the price that they're sold, or they're split. There's versus deals, which are a split between the promoter and basically the artist, where it's a mutually beneficial thing of how the formula is going to change for everything. It has to, because the profitability on both sides, the promoters who have to front the money up and expecting crowds to come that don't have necessarily a lot of extra income right now. So, someone said it best. I heard it. It was one of the doctors that I watch on a lot of the news programs, and he flat out said, if all four members of the Beatles right now announced a show, he's like, I wouldn't go. Oh, okay, that's cautious. Well, the hope is that these challenges are going to create some innovation, and we'll see what that all looks like. No pun intended, sounds like. What's going to be interesting is also the science of physics. Things at rest tend to stay at rest. Things in motion tend to stay in motion. And right now, because it's at a stop still, and because we know how much, you and I know, and I don't know obviously to the degree because again, the biggest tours I did were van tours. I've never done, where we were I mean, we were hauling our own gear.
But those shows were probably through a booking agent who had to do all of the legwork and everything of, say, booking it, with promoters who scheduling, like, versus the, like, all those elements.
Right, I'm saying it's on a big scale. When you multiply that with more people, it slows everything down even more, just because of the bureaucracy of it all, for lack of a better term.
Yep.
So interesting. Now, and I'm hoping, and maybe we'll talk about this, so you can maybe connect me with some other artists, because I'd really like to get their take on it. Like, because for them, their bread and butter has been performing, has been live interaction, and they do it not just for the money, they do it for the psycho remuneration. How are they doing right now? Because I felt so bad. I saw Paul Stanley, in his house a couple of times, like, just playing and all that. Like, how are they going to, and maybe you were speaking to someone, you've got some insight. How are they dealing with this right now?
Well, I don't know if you just heard, like, my puppy dogs just started to raise up.
I heard Paul Stanley. Paul Stanley.
Yeah, exactly. They're big kiss cats. Well, as I was saying before, artists. It's a completely different head. Creatively, they're a living, yes, but just feeding off a live audience, et cetera, like that. It's a tough thing. I've spoken to a couple of my stable of different artists that I work with and everything, because I stay in touch with a lot of them. And there's a lot of hesitancy. There's a lot of just like hesitancy, not only in their own hesitancy of putting their fans in any kind of jeopardy. So I've from what I've seen from talking to, I just have sensed a lot of not non-committal, not wanting to commit to it. Being able to do something unique, like a one-off kind of thing, for the fans, I think it's a nice gesture. It's a cool gesture, and I've been seeing that a lot. I've been watching a lot of quarantine videos, which I think are awesome. In fact, Charlie Benanti from Anthrax and Scott from Anthrax, something like that, have been doing a bunch of them. Charlie's been doing a whole bunch with Skolnick and everything like that, and they're awesome because they're playing covers and literally just jamming and mixing it together and quarantining for the fun of it. I just did one that we're actually going to post. It's going to post either today or tomorrow with a bunch of my old friends from the Six and Violence and Bates The Showerheads, and we did a quarantine video as a tribute to the two main guys in Bates The Showerheads that passed away in the last couple of years, Jim Starris and Jay Garino. Like I said, the uniqueness of being able to pull off some cool things here and there is a lot different than, saying, hey, I'm going to go out and do some live shows.
Have you heard anybody say that? Like, hey, I'm ready to go. Like a state is doing well, like Florida or Texas. I don't know what other states are not as, locked down, and they're allowing, well, I use Texas because I know Tony's going to be there. Do you sense that there's anybody like, well, let's just try like a little mini tour in an area just because we want to see, like, asking around, like, hey, are you willing to do it?
There's little like people talking a little bit here and there about it, but I gotta be honest, like the like you said, it's a big wheel that needs to start turning for any of that to happen. And a tour, the reason for a tour is that you're doing your show. You're tying it in with many other shows and amortizing the costs related to doing that and paying everyone and the gear, et cetera, like that. So it's only functional. It's only economically functional if it's doing a lot of them. Like that's why you do a tour and you're doing, say, 5 shows a week for, 7-8 weeks at a time, and hitting each of these.
Right. It's the only way that it's cost effective.
Right. Exactly. So from a cost effective standpoint, I don't know what the real ability to say pulling one off here and there is of any real benefit. And until it can really rely, like I said before, I totally believe in science, and what I'm seeing, I have to believe that it's not time yet to do that.
Yeah. And the conversation is about like, what do you do when like you get these obstacles, and how do you manage, and how do you pivot? Because, you know, for some, they may not have the time, like all the people who work on the road and all that. Have you spoke any of the people who their gigs, I mean, they weren't making, you know, tons of money on the road. Like a lot of those gigs are for the love of it more than necessarily getting tons of money. Like,
Completely.
what are they going to do, or what have they been doing? Have you seen any cool pivots, any new inventive, creative ways that people have figured out how to, you know, make some money and retain some sanity?
Well, retaining sanity and making money are definitely two different things. Making money or surviving, and in this industry alone has always been, you know, a battle. It's been tough for basically across the board. I mean, there's the top echelon of people who, you know, can survive those storms. Most of everybody that I know, I mean, they work their asses off all year for the dry times in, like, say the December, January, February. There's no gigs, kind of thing. I liken it to the guy who owns an ice cream shop in Cape Cod. Right. You better sell a shitload of ice cream in the summer, because you ain't selling any of it in the winter. Right. And it's the same thing for us. So this now has created a situation where I've been talking to a lot of people, and all of the unemployment issues and PPP loans, et cetera, like that. Everyone's trying to do what they can for mere survival.
Well, that's a challenge as well, because they were self-employed, so it's a whole different look. It's a gig economy. It's not like your company went out of business. It's the gig is no longer available.
Right. Exactly. So, I mean, it's in the transition right now, because obviously through March, April, and May, into May, there hasn't been the ability or much of doing anything. This opening now, or these phased openings where things are now opening, is definitely giving people other opportunities to do something, because our industry is not going to start back up again for quite a while. So you do have to pivot. You completely have to look for something else for the time being.
I wonder if it's going to go a little bit back to smaller, well, it's definitely smaller venues, but regional. So where, like, hey, you know, band, you know, whatever, Kiss, they all live together nearby, say, you know what, let's just do a tour. Let's just use the house gear. Let's just go out, because we want to play. We want to keep some engagement. We want to do stuff. And I wonder if there's going to be some opportunities for small, intimate pop-ups in different environments that are local to some of the artists, you know, where they live.
I think the best like
the drive-in that you shared.
Well, the test case I can think of that will determine that, or we'll see, probably would be Las Vegas's scenario. They admittedly they said we have to reopen. They need to. They need to do it in protocols and ways that, you know, they're going to skirt the I think the safety issues, et cetera, like that. But say if the casinos are opening up in limited ways, you could certainly have a test case of, say, like a band who normally would do a Las Vegas sit. You know, it's a long-term, you know, showcase.
Well,
in that same room.
He started rehearsing again, so I haven't spoken. Yeah. We spoke to him before things started, but he started the true music lessons.
Oh, cool.
So he pivoted, you know, right away to keep going, but he said he's starting to rehearse. So something's happening.
Yeah, like I said, like that might be the first real good test case of something like that. Not only in terms of a band being able to stay in one place with a rotating fans coming into a venue that is set up in a way that, you know, people need to be separate from each other, masks, et cetera, like that. But you can certainly live there, band and crew, with a minimal amount of things, using set gear that's there, that you're not hiring crew to move it in and out and in and out and in and out.
Right.
That to me is probably the best test case, because even casinos around the rest of the country and everything like that, those are nomad, kind of situations. Bands go to those casinos, and like casinos that are in the Midwest and sprinkled all around the South and everything like that. Their destinations, people that live there will drive 100, 200 miles to get to a show in their region. So like you said, regionally, I could see that it's now more the artists and their crew that have to become, have to nomad to these places. So we'll see.
It's going to be crazy. So you're in Palm Springs. You're back in Palm Springs.
Back in Palm Springs.
And how's it all going there? Now you've been home for 3 months, fams all together. You're all rocking it out. How has that been? Because it's probably the longest you've been together in ever.
Well, my wife and I, my beautiful wife Michelle, we met when I was working for Devo. I was their tour manager, and she was their secretary. And so we started dating literally while I was on the road, and been on the road ever since. 3 years ago, I moved the whole family to Nashville, where I was a general manager for a large production facility.
Oh, right. Yes, you did have some time where you were living.
For the first time in our relationship, for the first time for me in 25 years, I slept in the same bed every single night.
How was that?
It was fantastic. I got to admit, you really get used to it. But circumstances changed, and I went back out on the road like after about almost 2 years to now. So now being home here in Palm Springs, my wife and I love it here. Being here with her and the puppy dogs, and seeing our kids who are grown up now, and are
they all living with you?
No, they're both. One stayed in Nashville. He's doing really well in Nashville, and one moved to LA and is going to college and working. And so they're both doing really well. But they both came and visited during this time safely. But it's been interesting. I'm trying to keep myself busy and not going stir crazy. So, like I said, I had a couple of friends of mine who took pity on me, and because all of my music gear is either destroyed or in Nashville. So I had a couple of friends who were like, "Listen, I'm not using this mic. I'm not using this interface. I'm not using a cable," cool. And just sent me enough crap. And I actually still had my guitars here. So in the last month and a half, I've been trying to record and work on stuff like quarantine stuff with my friends, and I'm producing a couple of things for some friends that were like, "Hey, could you just mix this for me, or put this down on this?" So trying to stay mentally busy.
And was Michelle working prior?
Michelle was she's a director at a preschool. Right.
Yeah, I knew some school. So how's she been in, like, between the two of you now, all of a sudden home, and the all the changes that you've been going? How have you navigated that?
I'm sure sometimes she'll in the back of her mind saying, "Are you ever going back out on the road?" But she, no, it's been. I totally admit, I love my wife. I love spending time with her. So the mixed blessing of it is that I've been home with the puppies and the wife, and puttering around and fixing stuff up around the house, because we only just moved back last August. So we were still in the process. We did.
Is the work done? This is the house that we were talking about.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, all done. You happy?
I love our place. So yeah, I mean, there are things worse than having been sheltered in place for 3 months in a place that you love, in a beautiful part of the country, and gorgeous and everything. And like I said, playing with puppy dogs, and it's not bad.
And so you guys, like you talked about Vegas, have you left where you're at and gone like to Vegas or LA or anything just to get out?
I went into LA, drove into LA a couple of times to just do some basic things and to vibe it out. And this was in the last, like, say, month and a half, and it really felt like a ghost town. And I have friends still back in New York, because I was in New York just before this all hit. I played the Garden with Eros just prior to this happening. So I was in Manhattan, in New York. Saw friends of mine. Actually had a jam session with a couple of friends of mine. I've been looking at I've been Zooming with my friends back in New York, and it looks like a ghost town, like and they're only going into, I think, about to go into phase 1 or phase 2. That'll like the last ones that are opening back up again.
Yeah, I know. My mom, I guess she said they started whatever the phase is that they could eat outside. So I think she went and did that. And interestingly enough, and to your point, she expected, and I think the restaurants expected, that it was going to be packed, and they weren't.
Right.
People are being hesitant. So they were preparing, oh, you got to have parties at 6 or more, and you've got to make reservations and all that. And they showed up, and they're like, the kitchen's closing at 8 because no one's coming.
Right. And what did I see? There was something yesterday or the day before where a group of 16 girls went out for, like, they went out for drinks. I don't even know where it was, and 15 of them contracted the virus.
I don't, some of that stuff I don't like. I take all, not that I don't believe it, I take a lot of this stuff. I think everyone's on hyper alert, and for good or for bad. And I think that, the way our brains work, we focus on what's wrong, we will find what's wrong, and then we're just going to keep finding more of it, which will then create an image of things that are more intense than they really are. And I'm not minimizing it. I just, I don't focus on that stuff, because then I would go nuts.
I liken it more in 2 ways. If the stove is on and you've touched a hot stove before, you're not going to touch a hot stove again. And I think that's a cautious nature of experience. Mm-hmm. On the flip side of that is just that in terms of being a cautious person who, if a nuclear bomb went off or a nuclear accident happened and there's radiation everywhere, but you can't see it, and you don't have a little like clicker that's telling you the radiation's there. If just a general knowledge of, like, wow, there's radiation, I need to be aware of it, but I can't see it. I don't know where it is. You hopefully think that people would be cautious, of it. And that's how I'm looking at this. I fear that people are being just way too loosey-goosey about it. I'd rather be cautiously nervous and afraid of what it potentially could be, because there's a degree of safety in the fact that you're being cautious. If you're not being cautious, yes, maybe you get it, maybe you don't. You're more likely to get it if you're not being cautious than if you're being cautious.
Right. And then what it boils down to, and it's a whole, tangled web, because the argument then becomes like, well, if you don't care whether or not you get it, that's that's your problem. But if you bring it somewhere else, and then, now you're endangering other people, that becomes the argument. And I see all the sides. The balance is so as an example, I had this conversation the other day. I don't know. I have a few friends who have had it, and fine, no issues. I don't know anybody personally who's died. I know one person who knows someone who died, who was like 90 from it. My mom's husband is in a nursing home in New York, and some people on the floor claim, but again, I don't have any real hard data on that. But here's what I have had literally in my world experience. I've had multiple overdoses and deaths. I've had suicides in my world of people who, have given up and couldn't handle all of this. And obviously we see people who have lost their, entire everything, economy, like their jobs, their businesses, their everything.
Savings and
Yeah. So while I am in total agreement of being smart and all of that, the one thing that Heidi and I, as soon as this happened, we started seeing what was happening and going, okay, all right, we got all that. Got it. Has anyone helped and thought about what mental health issues, the people who are dealing with addiction, they're not allowed to go to meetings, they're not allowed, it's a perfect storm for someone, the people who are working from home who already have some potential challenges around alcohol or drugs, now they're working from home. I could start drinking, I could start day drinking and no one would know.
You're talking about residual effects.
Right. And very, very little, if any, attention was paid and still being looked at. And it's very disturbing because, anecdotal or not, the reality is that people are not dealing with this well, and they're not being equipped with tools. And is there access? Heidi and I, that's what the field that we've worked in, and personal development and all of that. And I'm not minimizing the reality of COVID and the possible, spread challenges and all of that. It's that balance, right? Sure. So, if I never leave my house and then I end up, drinking myself to death, but I at least I wasn't being selfish for going out and wanting to live my life, that's where the challenge comes. And it's such a complex conversation, and there's no easy answer.
No. And the old adage, may you live in interesting times. Fuck that. It's totally true that cyclically, we as a culture, we as a society, we as a race, we go through trying times, we go through trying things. This is an extreme hardship that, like you said, residually has so many parts to it that I completely agree with you that are being unfortunately disregarded and ignored to everybody's detriment.
Well, and I think and so this is the virus that I do my best to also defend myself from is getting sucked into the drama of the discussion around the news and the perception of it. And again, maybe to my fault, maybe if I,
better than sticking your head in the sand, though. I mean, someone who would stick their head in the sand and just like say, oh, this is all going on, but I can't deal with it. Boom, I'm going to ignore it. It's still going on. It's still happening. So I totally understand what you're saying about it. I think the greatest cleanser is light. You need to show this. You need to see it. You need, not even a year. What was it? A year ago, we were talking about little children being held in basically camps, concentration camps on the border, immigrant children separated from their families, et cetera, like that. That's still happening in this scenario with the shit going down. And their services were horribly maintained and given back then. It is not even a blip on the radar of anyone even paying attention. That shit is still going on in this current situation. So our gaze is never quite always fixed on one singular thing. We're distracted all the time with this and like that. What always bothers me is that there are all these other things going on that don't get paid attention to. The news. I'm a news junkie. I'm a newsaholic. I've been ever since. Literally, I flew home.
You need to see someone about this.
Well, probably. I was on tour with Chic, with Nile Rodgers, and we were doing a bunch of shows. And we flew back home to New York on September 10th.
Oh.
Right. And I just got home. I was at my girlfriend's apartment. Actually, she went to work, and I was sitting there making a cup of coffee, looking out her window in Queens, and I could see the towers, and I was like, "There's smoke coming from one of the towers," and it turned me instantly into an absolute news addict because I never wanted to not know what was going on. So this is an admitted news addict speaking.
You're not even in recovery.
Not even in recovery. I'm full, but I diversify what I'm watching to try to get as many perspectives and gazes as I possibly can.
That's good.
And and it's very disappointing. Like, there's so much stuff going on in the world that we're not hearing about, that we're not knowledgeable about, et cetera. So,
well, and can I also say
full circle of what we were saying is that I can understand where people could look at the coverage of it and go, oh, like they're covering it all the time, and they're gaslighting it, and they're talking this and that. You got to pay attention. you got to.
Right. And look, I'm not at all suggesting head in sand. I'm just looking at, because two things. So the news, with all the metrics and the way they could follow and all of that, is the same as an algorithm on Facebook on your phone, which is the same as the way our brain works, right? It's a reticular activator system. Seek and ye shall
find.
Ask and ye shall receive. So when the news notices that people tune in to breaking alert, all this, and that's when people are tuned because they can see like all the data that they're getting is what's being watched, how long. You don't have the Nielsen boxes anymore because it's all digital. They know what's being viewed.
True.
So let me backtrack a little bit to some context. When I was working with Tony Robbins about 12 years ago, Tony created a show called Breakthrough. He recorded 6 episodes where he went into, it was an hour-long episode. He went into a family situation where it was dire. Like, one guy, he became a quadriplegic. On his wedding night, he dove into a pool, broke his neck, and became a quadriplegic the night of his wedding. And, basically was losing it and had no will to live. And his wife is having to, handle, like, he's got nothing. He's just like losing it. Another show is with a father. He was a veteran, had PTSD, was struggling. It was like 6 episodes. They aired. They been big hoopla. Here, we're going to air this show. Guess how many aired?
I have no idea.
2.
Okay.
Because it wasn't. Nobody wanted to watch
nobody wanted
someone improving their lives. It didn't get that didn't get enough viewership. So when we look at that, and same thing with Facebook, when you're on Facebook, and it doesn't matter, like on some level, like I'm not even gonna get into any bias conversation. If you're engaging in commenting on whatever, doesn't matter, person X, blah, 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 screw this guy, arg, 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 and the other people like, yeah, F that guy, arg, 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 screw them, arg, arg, arg. Facebook algorithm goes, oh, you seek and you shall find. You want to have that. You engage in that. And we want you on there. However, if you're on like, oh, look at peace, love, and happiness and all of this, you get more of that in your news feed. You're not going to get as much as the others. So when you focus on it, you get more of it.
It is. We are all a commodity, and we are all we are a click and we're an advertising budget in every possible way. You're completely, totally right about that. And the news, in my opinion, has become way too repetitive. It's become
they got 24 hours to fill.
Yeah, exactly. Repetitive, opinionated, etc. The tribal camps are so completely divided and everything like that. Which, like I said, is one reason why I try to diversify what I watch. What background I did have when I went to college, I got a degree in communications, and my major in communications was literally of media and how it's presented, like the gaze, GAZE, the view, what you're watching, how you're watching it, what's being shown, how is it being shown. So I completely agree with you on all of that. Where that ties back into the music industry, where that ties back into, say, artists, et cetera, like that. Devo nailed this very, very well in terms of they are a commodity. They may be selling themselves, literally selling their music for a toilet bowl commercial or everything like that. These revenues, these streams, and the satisfaction of their fans has been so diversified now with so many other things that everybody has, I think, kind of like just a strain to grab a foothold of a market share or what they are. So to draw a parallel of that, say live shows or live events or conventions or, all of these things, this industry or these tangent related industries are having to definitely go through a major paradigm shift of what they're going to present as a package or as a deal or how to do these things.
And how they're going to cut through the noise to even let people know that it's an opportunity.
Exactly. And so there's, for bright entrepreneurial people, they're probably rubbing their hands going, oh, great. Like all these new opportunities. Fantastic. This is going to be a paradigm shift in every possible way of how to do shows, of how to do tours, of how to generate income, of how to get yourself paid, of how to get your people paid. This is going to be a big shift, because even once they get a vaccine and can work their way through, that might be a 2-year time frame where, like we were saying, people have fallen off the bandwagon. They've gone to other things. They've, found other pastures.
Yeah.
Restaurants.
People, it's okay. We're ready to we're ready to go back out on the road, and they reach out to you and all these other people like, oh no, dude, I'm out of this game. I can't, I've started this other business. I'm doing this other thing. And then they're like, well, who are we going to hire? Like, well, I don't know. We didn't teach anybody what we do. Cause,
that's good. But that's actually a good thing you're saying that I do a lot of mentoring to like young tour managers and production managers. I have friends of mine who have a fantastic webinar that they're doing, tourmanagement.org, where twice a week they're doing live, like just like this on YouTube, etc., of different topics. I've done a webinar with them. Like I said, there are things that are being done to kind of help the next generation coming through to do it, because that's the other thing. How long can and should you be on the road 10 months out of the year, just gone? How long can you survive? I've been doing this for so long. I've lost so many of my friends and people that I've worked with and everything like that they physically couldn't take it anymore. Like it's a hard ass job. It's a drain.
Well,
so,
I'm sure that, like, to that point, I'm sure that the tours will very likely be shorter, that people are going to, at least they've come to appreciate their families more. They've come to appreciate their time, to kind of relax and not be, going 24/7, 365 for 30 years in a row.
But what would have to also happen to make that happen? The business side of this industry has to look at its assets, and those are assets, have to look at their assets in a different way so that the gig economy is not so mercenary and to make a living. There's no representation there. There's no organization. There's no union. There's no healthcare. There's nothing there other than just what you make of it. And so when something happens like this has happened, it exposes the fact that this industry and a lot of other industries are they're a house of cards. They're not built with any kind of structure. Well, and if there was a reorganization, or there was like a realization of a future way that this can now come about, I would love and hope that there would be a realization of saying, okay, we have to take care of the people who help us get these shows done, for a symbiotic relationship between how the industry works. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, and it is so complex, because really what you're dealing with is a series of entrepreneurs. But I think the challenge becomes entrepreneurship. The entrepreneur mindset is very different than someone who's kind of doing a job. Like, so as an example, you are so versed, you have, like, you're an entrepreneur in, well, you are, and with all of the ways and the things that you offer to the industry, you have that level of flexibility to figure it out and all of that. Someone who is just happy and looks at, like, whatever their gig is, whether they love being a roadie or, you know, doing, you know, I don't know, like, all the different gigs, you know, a lot more. I think some of them, they're probably just, it's kind of the same gig, like being a guitar tech. Like, it's kind of like different guitars, different, but it's the same gig. And once you get into it, like, okay, cool. And you're not thinking like an entrepreneur, like, okay, cool, I need to market, I need new creative. How can I find a new way to tune this guitar? And how can, like, there's a whole other mindset. And neither is good. I'm not, you know, making any good or bad. It's just, it's knowing the patterns and all of that.
I'm referring more to, say, that guitar tech and doing what he's doing, like you said earlier, should have mental health care available to him, because it is so necessary.
Not in dispute. Not in dispute. And I don't know, but my point is that because the way the whole organization is set up, it's set up like a bunch of entrepreneurs. It's not set up like a, which
goes full circle to, like what I said, a shift or a reimagining of, to me, hopefully, to me, I would so hope that this whole thing could be a reimagining of even just society, of people, of anything. You know, like there are things that happen that make a tectonic plate shift in things. You know, and there are also things that are a tinderbox, that are literally the match that strikes a massive fire. You know, ask any kid right now, ask any kid today, who's Archduke Ferdinand, and they would answer you with, yes. Who is Archduke Ferdinand? Like, Archduke Ferdinand was a ruler back in Europe, that his assassination, just him getting killed, sparked World War I. I mean, and there were tons of other factors of why it started, but that was the spark that changed tectonically, like everything. This whole thing going on, like the things that are going on, these hopefully maybe are reasonable people, a time to re-examine and change how things are going. Because if they're built on a house, if they are built on a house of cards, if it's just a sandcastle. There's so much better that it could be done or should be done, and this is the exposure of that. Like, the curtain's been revealed.
I get it, and it is such a complex conversation because people are complex, and I think where we often run into these conversations where the challenge becomes is everybody wants what's best. Like, I believe, you know, like, and I'm not picking sides. Like, I always use the example of guns, right? I'm a gun owner. I've owned guns my entire life. I've been around them. I've grown up. I've trained in them. Like, I have a huge respect and honor for the power that has, and I don't treat it lightly. Right. So it's just good. Whether people, you know, like, agree with guns and is a separate conversation. You know, like, I don't even know what your feelings are, but you know me as a person. You probably didn't know that in New York, I was a gun owner. I've had a license, like a handgun owner. Mm-hmm. I'm not a member of the NRA. I'm not, you know, like, all that. So let's take that out. But like, when people are like, you know, the NRA or people who are for guns, here's my belief. We are not gun owners sitting there going, oh, you know, it'd be great. Let's see how many people we can kill with these guns. Let's make them available so kids can kill each other. Like, that's not what we're thinking. And I like to think that people who are anti-gun, because why a gun owner goes, I want it because I believe in my right to be able to protect myself and my family. God forbid I needed to, period. Right. And I don't run around. I'm not carrying it out and stuff. It's in the house and it's locked and it's safe. I don't believe that people who are anti-gun are going, ooh, you know, it would be great. Let's make sure that no one can harm themselves and only criminals who get the guns can kill them and they are helpless. Or, you know, like no one's thinking that either. We both want safety. We both want the ability to live life, to prosper, to be able to provide, to all of that. Now, we may differ on how we do that. But as soon as we start demonizing the person who has a differing process and not agree on the purpose, that's when we have a huge problem. The challenge that we're having right now, and where I think, and this is where we get back into the media conversation and start to go down this rabbit hole, is I believe that the media, the people who are controlling the media, we have to be very careful about like what they want. Because what they want is not in line with what I think is best for the average person. I think that they're benefiting from the being sucked upon, sucking the brain waves out of everybody, and are able to create an environment that prevents us from having a real conversation. And as Guns as an example, if you watch the news, you can get all bent out of shape based on all what we're being told, instead of just having a real conversation with someone and go, oh, okay, that makes sense. All right, yeah. And I think I agree with you. I wish there's going to be, I hope, and I wish for a healthy space that those types of conversations can be had, because the reason why the very people who have made it so difficult for the tech and that whole gig economy are the structure through which the big companies who are in control and benefiting from it anyway.
Yeah. I mean, in terms of in terms of this industry, and say like the live music industry, for years, the smaller independent mom and pop promoters, local promoters, from all around the country, they slowly started to get swept up by the larger corporate entities that promote shows. Mm-hmm. And that kind of thing took hold, and so many like the smaller ones, went by the wayside. The large corporate entities then bought the venues that they were promoting the shows in. They own the concessions that go on to these things. Oh, there's parking's a revenue, so.
And then they were able to say, oh, you know what? We don't have employees anymore. We have independent contractors.
Right.
And then so there goes.
Right.
Yep.
Right. So as I was saying before, I would love to think of a way that there could be a massive paradigm shift in how it's done. You're right, through a corporate through the big corporate wheel, but that big corporate wheel is sucking air right now, and needing to think of something potentially different, or different way as well. And you're right, the discourse that goes on is something that hopefully the conversations can actually happen.
Right. And hopefully the best thing that can happen is that people get tired of being sucked into the drama of the extremities, and they, it's like, what was that? Was it the Simpsons or Family Guy episode when they no longer had TV for a while and they had to start reading, or right. Something where people have the opportunity to actually be on par and not make it an ideology, but make it a person to person. Like, okay, wait, you're a person. You're not like, it's not an identity. It's a human. Right. And,
meanwhile, don't be near each other.
Right. Well, exactly.
Don't touch each other. Like, handshakes will never happen ever again. A hug will never happen. Like, so.
So have you had this? You've been out, right? So like, that's that awkward moment. You go see somebody and you're like, hand, elbow, fist bump, hug. Like, it's just that awkward moment.
I think elbows are as sexy as you're going to make it for a while.
That's unfortunate. That's good. Yeah. Well, and that's like with Tony, it's going to be interesting with Tony's event. not only are you obviously sitting next to each other, but I don't know if you've ever been to a Tony Robbins event or any of my events. We're massaging each other and a lot of hugs, high fives.
A lot of physical interaction. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know. And here's the other thing, which is so challenging and sad. And you don't have this issue as much because your kids are older. Ellie's 5. And they did fortunately open up the camps here. So she's going to gymnastics camp.
Oh, wow.
But after the first couple of days, she's like, I hate it. I'm like, why? She's like, we can't be near each other. I can't talk to anybody. I'm like, why am I here? Like, I'm just like, we're doing the exercises and whatever, but we're so far apart. I can't talk to my friends.
Yep.
So
my wife runs a preschool. She's a director of a preschool. She's been telling me all the time how much of a challenge, it is in every possible way. That's the look you're looking at for right now. Like that's how it's gonna be for now.
Well, and then I go back to the thoughts and the trauma, like talking about the collateral damage and the residual, potential challenges. What impact is that going to have on the way a child starts forming its meanings about life, about people, about processing communication, about doing business, about living in fear, about everything is you just, and by the way, the confusion, right? Because it's the other thing is that right now, just what's going on, it's so divisive. It's just confusing to even know what the heck is going on because both sides are so of any argument are so bought into it. There is no middle ground because if you lean anyway from either extreme, you then get accused by the other side of being and like poor kids growing up, they're probably not even knowing how to have a conversation without yelling and screaming at somebody.
Yeah. May you live in interesting times.
Well, I'm glad we solved the problems of the world on this call, and the music industry is going to be a better place for it.
Now we got to figure out baseball. Like, how the hell we?
Well, has any sports started back up? I know they're talking about it. Which
in Europe, they've started up a couple of the soccer leagues without any fans. In Korea, they've for over a month now started up the Korean baseball with no fans. So, that's a parallel thing to obviously the music industry because it's still entertainment. But that's going to be very interesting to see. They're mentioning now about the NFL and about how they're actually going to do it. Baseball there's been another proposal. There was a meeting actually this morning by the commissioner and the head of the Players Association to try to commit to each other at least a partial season, completely, like, so we're talking about a paradigm shift, completely changing how the divisions are set, which teams would be playing which teams in a division. The rules are need to be modified and changed to do this. And that's a sport where the monetization of the stands and concessions, everything like that. These are multiple.
It's again not so complex, right? So think about it. What if you just got, before this happened? What if you just got like a $20 million deal for 5 years or 10 years based on the metrics, the projected metrics, and then they go, but now we're making 80% less. We're not paying you that other $8 million.
His name is Garrett Cole, and he pitches for the New York Yankees now, or he's supposed to be pitching for the New York Yankees, and hasn't thrown a single pitch. And he had just signed a massive deal, and the economics from the owner's side and the Players Association side, everything like that. These are all things. So in a direct parallel to to the entertainment business, the live music industry, et cetera, like that. This is a complex. This is going to be a complex fix.
Well, I agree with you. And again, the reason why I'm doing this show, whatever you want to call it, is educational, hopefully edutainment, is to offer a space that we can at least start unpacking some of it, not solve anything, but see other perspectives and like understand that everyone has been through something like this, not to this degree, but we've all had upturns. I mean, we dealt with I dealt more because I wasn't on the road, but I had to reinvent myself. The music industry changed forever. Real estate in 2008 changed forever, right? There's so many different things, are always going to be in flux. And the question is, how did we navigate through it? And what I've noticed with consistency is that people didn't lose their minds when it happened. They, for a moment, got maybe a little, oh, crap. Okay. And then, all right, what am I going to do? What can I do now to shift? What can I do now to have, to have a purpose, to have a vision about where we're going?
Well, that goes back to diversity. And so like my whole career has literally been ping-ponging from, say, one thing to another, not with any specific, angle or specific direction of it. But as I said before, being able to modify, being able to deal with situations and scenarios. And, as a tour manager or a production manager, you're constantly being thrown a curveball or, this and that. It's juggling, you're juggling a golf ball, a chainsaw, a glass of water, and a feather all at the same time.
Perfect analogy. And imagine if you had a belief system in yourself that you were like, I can't do, whatever, like tour manager. I can't do production. No, those guys suck. Those guys, I can't do that. Or I won't do, teching on guitar. I would never do that because I'm as a tour manager, I can't be, I can't pick up the guitar and do that. So that's what I'm talking about, is that mind shift of expanding, diversified thinking.
Yes.
To see other perspectives, to not demonize and make someone bad because they, demonize the player who makes a couple $1 million. Like at the time they deserved it based on the income, the revenue that was coming in. You go, okay, boom. Hopefully all those players who are making that money are going to be able to go, oh, okay, yeah, I guess maybe I understand why I'm not going to get that next payment because you don't have any money.
Exactly.
And same thing with it. Hopefully people will start seeing shows again.
I mean, there's the love of live music. There's the love of seeing a band. It's the logistics now. Everything in my world has always been the logistics of it. So, and you could talk about the reality. You could talk about a reality. You could talk about a dream. You could talk about all of these things. There's a logistic to all of it that needs to happen, and the same reason why, as you're loading into a venue, you're already loading out in your mind.
Yep,
is because you're in real time doing it, but you're doing it in terms of the fact that you already planned what that day was going to be, meaning you advanced it to know what the scenario would be. And you're reasonable and pragmatic enough at the time, in the moment, to handle and deal with dealing with following the elephant. And that's a more necessity and skill set in terms of how I think of things than necessarily the actual skill of doing something.
Well, yeah, it's mindset is everything.
Yeah. You're right, and it goes along with the same insecurities and things. But if confidence in what you can do, confidence in what you've done before, and I will do this again in whatever scenario, and confidence in I'm going to try something else. This is not working. I'm going to try something else.
And it's confidence in other people, confidence in your team.
Oh, absolutely. It's reliance and confidence in the team that you've put around you. And like you said, not being over hyperly critical of them or dismissive of them or like that. The pitcher has to throw to the catcher. Like the quarterback if the quarterback's gonna succeed, he is going to either throw or he's going to run it himself or he's going to hand it off. Teamwork.
Yeah. Well, and the ball boy is as important as the batter.
Damn right.
And sometimes, we also get a little confused with all of that because there's all these beliefs about, what that means. Like, and it's like, dude, if without the ball boy, I wouldn't get my bat. Or in tennis, the kid's running and grabbing the balls. I'd trip, I'd fall. Everyone is as important as everyone else. And I think that's where, the healing occurs. And when you were talking about kind of reforming the business is having that attitude of like, okay, we're going to reimagine it and we're going to place value on, everyone whose role is in it. Now, that doesn't mean everyone gets paid the same because there's different risks, there's different rewards, there's different everything. This isn't equity of outcome. It's equity of like humanity. Like, okay, you're an integral part of this business, period.
Right.
And that's where I think hopefully this will all go, is that people will see that. And then I guess, however it gets structured financially is really what it all boils down to. Because ultimately that's what creates the momentum, is who's got the money and who controls the purse strings. And
the reality of maybe a completely new idea of completely different idea of how money works. A completely different idea of how much value there is to things. The cost of living or cost of existing or cost of being, the cost of doing business is a total parallel to what the income base can be. So if people are not going to be able to generate as much income, personal income, everything else is going to suffer. Everything else is going to, in domino effect, going to suffer. So if the industry itself and all those components, like we were just talking about, if they have an economic value across the industry, any relief that can be given to them in helping their economics, in the end, is going to help all of the economics. And ticket prices for shows, right?
I remember they used to be like $15, $17, $25. Right now it's like $350.
Right. That's a perfect example. Is that what it's going to go back to? Is that what it's going to go back to because of necessity of being able to pull off, and all these say now live venues and live events and everything like that, there is so much more added economics to it because safety, because of health, because of every other tangent that now has to be included into that ticket price. Because the venue, whereas they would have hot dog salesmen and they had cleaning crew, that cleaned up after the show and everything like that, their med staffs that now probably will have to be maintained. Like venues might have to open 2 hours, 3 hours earlier than they used to for a show to accommodate having to, get people in and how they function, operate. All those extraneous costs or all those related costs are now going to be put into that ticket price. They're going to be put into there. Is the loss or the differential in that going to come off the corporates, back, or is it going to be put onto, is it going to be put onto other people's burdens?
It's going to be other people, but it always is.
Right.
That's the way it is. So what the answer to that is, it's a very complex, weave of thing. And my fear is out of overreaction, the way maybe like not being as pragmatic as we could have been and having an exit plan and all that, like you shared earlier, like, oh yeah, I already know as soon as I walk in, I already have my plan on when I'm leaving and what's next. Like we didn't do that now. Like when we're under stress, we don't do that. Like the reason why you plan ahead is so that when you're under stress, you already have your plan.
That's tour managing and production managing right there.
Right. So what my fear when we go down some conversations like that is and concern is that they need to be done in a non-reactive way, and that we don't try and blow something up without really testing kind of the outcome, because there are so many collateral relationships that we don't take into consideration, or we are hoping that it'll just work itself out. I don't, like I know restaurants, there's some restaurants that were adding like a 17%, 25% COVID tax. Like, you kind of go, as a consumer, if I want to go, I know costs going in, like, all right, I guess I got to pay because I'm tired of eating at home, and I'm willing to pay the 17% because they're going, hey, we're still paying rent on this building and we've been out of business and we're being told we can't operate at more than 25%. So what are we going to do? Because the banks, they didn't give us a cutback. The taxes, yeah, we may have gotten a little bit of a bonus check or whatever, but that only covered the first month of what happened. So like, what are we doing? And then we go, oh, you know what? Let's just, that UN thing, the global reset. That sounds like a good idea. Like, whoa, hold on a minute. That's, now you're just basically saying the bureaucracy we have sucks. Let's go into a different one. Like, I'm not sure that's the right answer either. So like
the right answer is preparation is always the key, but we're already in the boat. We're already in the middle of the ocean.
No, I know we got to build the plane while we're flying it.
Exactly. So that to me is where, again, one thing that you were saying, which I totally agree with, rational people looking at rational solutions, co-opted solutions, like, symbiotic situations that help all and help,
and also I think we need to look at who we are as people and the humanity of it, and what our strengths and weaknesses are. I think the biggest problem with technology and all of that is these illusions of what things are and aren't. Everybody's got the perfect selfie post and everybody's pretending that everything is a certain way, instead of going, nah, I'm okay that I'm, maybe 20 pounds overweight, but you never know because of the way I take my picture. Or maybe I'm okay with not being having all the, like, people demonize rich people at times, right? It's okay. Not everybody's going to do that. There's certain risks that people take in order to have the experiences. I mean, you worked really, really hard and worked on yourself, worked on your business to get to where you are. Do you deserve more for what you contributed than someone who didn't do nearly the effort and put in the time, the energy, or add as much value as you did? Do you deserve more?
I tend, and it is my personal beliefs, that, you're rewarded for what you do. It's and should be proper reward. I'm also a firm believer in helping somebody.
No. I'm not suggesting not to help people. I'm suggesting that you do better helping people than you giving the money to someone else to help somebody, because then they want their piece and then their piece and their piece, right? So if you can help someone directly and you are the responsible steward and you are a servant leader, you are naturally going to, you shared it yourself. You mentor people, you help people. That's what you believe in. With money that you have, whatever you tithe, whatever you give, you do as part of who you are, right? So you're a responsible steward. And I guess, cause like I've seen people who have like leveraged everything. They've, taken out, they've taken their 401k and they started a business and they hired a bunch of people and they did all that. And then people are like, fuck you and all your money. And like, hold on. Do you know how many jobs I provide? I pay the insurance. I do all that. Like, yeah, I should be able to buy a boat if I have the extra income, because I'm adding so much value to the community and to the industry. Like, where do we draw the line? Because that's like saying to the artists, oh, you don't deserve $400 for a ticket. Fuck you. And, you know, all you did was write a song.
I mean, you're talking about shaming. You're talking about,
right.
You know, like, yeah, exactly.
Which I think is the worst thing that happened in our society, is demonizing success. That making someone who has earned more money than someone else and go, well, you know, you must have, and this is what has killed the economy, I believe, in many ways, is because we've been conditioned to thinking that people who are successful did something wrong or nefarious to do it. Now, are there companies that take advantage of people? Absolutely. Do we need to have corporate reform, tort reform? Absolutely. I think that we should have term limits on everybody in government. There should be no career politicians, right? Because then they'd be preparing, their exit strategy would start the day they got into office, realizing that when they leave, they're going to have to follow the rules that they set in place.
I like it.
That would be more beneficial. But same thing with, I think, you know, like as an intern, you know, what we did at Cove, one of the things being an intern, what did we do? We did everything.
Yeah.
Which prepared us and understood how things were done instead of just doing one thing. And, you know, I agree in diversification of thought, diversification of effort, diversification of conversation of people, and appreciating people for where they're at, and also appreciating ourselves, like of who we are and where we're at.
Right.
I can't compare myself to Tony Robbins.
Why not?
Well, I can, but he's like 6'8". No, I just mean like as an example, like when I look at mentorship, and, you know, when I went on the road with Tony, I was like, oh, I'm going to model Tony Robbins. Well, Tony was already 30 years in the industry. He was in a very different place than when I started with him. Right. So what he was doing, how he was working, the things he was doing, you know, like you would, if you were going on a tour, the way you run a big tour for the Eros guy is very different than you ran the tour for Fat or the Jays.
Not
in scale.
In scale and scale only.
Yeah.
But scale is important. Character. Yeah. Character is I think what you
absolutely
how you really base it on.
I just mean, if someone were to look at the strategies of, oh, I just call, you know, so-and-so, and like, yeah, but so-and-so, and that is like that, we just need a U-Haul, not a tour bus.
Yeah. There, even the scale of things, you'd be surprised how it still comes down to, say, proper budgeting and sticking to that, you know, even the biggest acts in the world that have every access to everything they possibly can. You'd be amazed how many times they'd be like, do we really need this? Because this is just extra money coming out of my pocket. Right. Like we don't need this. And the difference between, say, a small band and a van who don't have the money, so they're, you know, hey guys, cup of soup for breakfast, lunch, and dinner today as well. You know, there's a necessity of it, and there's also like the firm sticking to a budget.
Right. Oh, of course. Well, that all stays the same. I just meant like with the scale and the hats that you wear when you're on, you know, when it's just you in the tour bus and you're doing everything. Different mindset than when you go, oh wait, I got to delegate. I've got to. Right. I'm going to. I don't need to do that. That's why we hired this person so that I could do these other things. That's what I mean.
I had to learn. I had to learn how to delegate.
I'll bet. Yeah.
Oh yeah. No. Once I got to the point where I would have, say, production assistants or you know, a separate tour accountant, or, you know, things like that. It took a lot of learning on my part to relinquish.
Yeah, but I don't have to do that.
Yeah. I got way too used to doing way too much stuff.
But then I think the benefit of that was you were able to know how to hire, know how to vet, know how to follow up and check on people's work. So when they showed it to you, you didn't like just go, oh, okay, I guess I got to trust you. You know what to look for, which made you an incredible asset.
Yes.
Because, I mean, I'm sure there's fraud that happens in every business. And, you know, if someone finds a way, oh, this guy's not going to check my work or know what he doesn't know what's going on. Oh, a little bit here, a little bit there. And you're like, whoa, hold on. And I'm sure you've caught stuff, not fraudulently necessarily, but like, hey, wait a minute. Why are we doing that? And like, oh, I don't know. And like, no, let's hold on. Let's go reevaluate.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely the knowledge base gives you that, knowing like, wait a second, because I've done this, like, right. And I know what's going on, and I know how this should be. So yeah.
Well, dude, I mean, usually here I'd be saying, you know, obviously people can get in touch with you. You're not selling product. You're not, I guess, mentorship. You don't have a book yet, do you?
No, not at this point.
Are you going to write one? I think you should.
I've toyed with the idea of it. I'm way more insular and you know, I don't, it's not that all the experiences and the things that I've experienced through these years are certainly interesting enough that they would make a book, and not in a tell-all kind of like, you know, kind of way, more in a, like, this is the shit that happened to me. This is the shit that I you wouldn't believe that this, and this. And I mean, that goes for so many of us. So many of us, especially in this business, you know, have had all those those experiences, like those unique experiences.
If you don't do it, maybe I will. We could do it together. Maybe we could create a book and interview all of those people, get some of their stories, and create a compilation book. So it's not so huge of an undertaking. But I mean, while we've got people, you know, kind of not working as much, and maybe they're considering moving on to another thing, maybe they'd love to regale some of their challenges or successes.
I know the exact guy for you and I to talk to about that. So
okay. Yes. All right, let's do that then. Cool. So let's continue to add value to people's lives for nothing the way we are right now, and be present to the possibility of transformation, change, and beyond, because this is a topsy-turvy world at the moment.
Yeah, and it's difficult. Admittedly, it's difficult. It's very. I mean, I'm not immune to it. It's been depressing. It's been sad. It's frightening in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you know, it's a difficult time that everybody's going through, and just maintaining. Like, that's it. Maintain.
Well, and that's why I offer the guided hypnotic meditations. My Freedom Hack program is all about state management and dealing with our relationship with what's happening out there, because we can't change what's going on outside. All we could do is mitigate, modify, create empowering meanings, look at our beliefs so that we can move forward, so we can take advantage of whatever opportunities are presented.
But also to keep in mind, and I would say this, I'd say this to everybody. If I told you 6 months ago that this is where we'd be at in 6 months, this is where we're going to be at, nobody would believe it. Right. 6 months from now, you will not believe like how insane and crazy things can possibly be. So,
well, I'm hoping it's better.
I would hope so. I'm
well, dude, I think we're running out of stuff. So I think the aliens, that's the next thing, that, because, you know, we're running out of stuff to kind of fight about down here.
No, we're not. We're 132 days away from an insanely important election, everything like that. That 6 months prior to this, no one would have believed it. What I'm saying is 6 months from now, holy crap, everybody hold on to your hats.
Well, and this is then back to why it's so important that we manage our states, because look, I have very successful friends. I've made it a point to interview. Like, these are the conversations I have with my friends that, you know, like, just hang out. I meet them like, oh, we just talk about stuff, and like, how'd you do this? Right. And when politics comes up, every single one of them has said this: I have my preferences. But when someone I didn't want was in office, I made it work. When someone I wanted was in office, I made it work. But I never took my eye off of what was most important, which was doing my duty, serving my clients, serving my staff, serving my family, period. And it's very interesting because I think all too often people are making it too much about the election instead of what they could be doing now, which is.
I think the election is only one. I think election's only one component of it. But what I'm saying is my bigger point is to the just the unpredictability.
Right.
Like,
well, again, that's why I think it might be aliens. That's all.
Right. So, like I said, in terms of unpredictability, 6 months ago, no one would have believed it. Not even in just terms of elections, this and everything like that. I'm saying 6 months from now, unpredictability, like things might be absolutely insane.
Well,
and just
I wish we'd be putting on
the way to be is to maintain is right now. Please, everyone, just maintain.
Well, and I would suggest, check your emotions. Don't let them get out of control. And start arming, with some spiritual and emotional armor, because I think a lot of what's happening right now is that people are so emotionally raw for so many reasons, and they're all valid, that it's like, if you could take my arm and you could smack my arm and nothing, but if I had a big gaping wound on it, the breeze going by, I'm like, and now
it's exposure. It's I totally get it. And it's amazing. It's numbness, because I think people are numb right now from being just all being numb.
It's so complex because it's both.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the challenge is we all want the simple answer, and the answer is not going to be simple. It's going to be something no one ever thought of. It's going to be something that is, elusive, because right now we're looking for the one pill rather than opening up to.
So you just said it perfectly. Open-mindedness.
Yep.
Open-mindedness to what might be.
Yeah, and that's the purpose of this experience. So hopefully we've opened some minds as to what's possible, how important diversity thinking, diversity behavior is, how important stick-to-itiveness and you could have given up on the industry back when all that happened, when Napster and the technology and all of that, you could have been like, oh, the music is never going to be the same. Record companies are closing. I better fold up my tent now before it disappears, right? And had you done that, you wouldn't be where you are today. Because I'm going to hallucinate. There were some people who did potentially give up because they're like, oh man, I don't know what's going to happen with the industry here.
Yeah, it's true.
Same happened with real estate and all of that. So dude, thank you. Let's talk more about let's get that book happening. I think that would be phenomenal.
That'd be great.
Yeah. And thank you. I know we went way longer than we had originally talked about.
Okay.
But I have the so much.
I have the time.
Yeah.
I love you too, man. It's I appreciate doing this. I've been catching a bunch of them, and it's awesome, and it's made me very happy to be able to talk to you for a while about things.
Beautiful. And do you see Bill Porcelli was on it? Do you know Bill?
Yeah.
So that was fun. And Dee's going to be on it. Jesse Snyder was doing it. I'm reach out to Tony Arnell and all those guys. And if there's anyone you could think of, especially some artists, I'd love to get some artists' perspectives. And then other managers, anybody. I also have some comedians. I have Tommy Savitt, Craig Shoemaker, Dennis Blair. Oh, cool. They're all coming on. So I'm looking to have as much of a diverse group of people from multiple industries to kind of share what's worked for them and how they're making it work now, real time.
I'd love to spread the word. So yeah, I'll help any way I can.
Awesome, brother. Well, I love you for who you are and who you aren't. And we will see you soon.
Thanks for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you, brother. Love you.
Big love.